use that. Well, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So let's dive into the work that you're doing as a coach and strategist and as a writer. And to begin that journey, 5 years ago, I've been trying to put this question to rest, but it's just too much a part of our lives. 5 years ago, this pandemic was really throwing all of us into different directions,
hmm
changing everything. How did you survive the 2020 pandemic, and how has it radiated into your world today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've worked in automotive retail for over a decade. It's about 14 years now. And during the pandemic, we were open. We just kind of never really stopped. So for a lot of folks who got to spend all that time at home, um, you know, either redecorating their house or reanalyzing their life, right? Nothing really stopped for us. We just kept going, which brought its own challenges, of course, because a lot of people didn't know how to deal with that, you know. So coming out of that, I think for me, it helped me realign with kind of what I may want to do longer term. I'm very good at what I do, but at the same time, I felt like I needed to do something more, and I felt like I was in a very small bowl. And so I think that like in when you're talking about the pandemic and how it helped people reassess things, I think that's what it did for me.
So let's get into exactly what you do. There's a lot of things going on in your career.
hmm
If I put you in front of a bunch of kids, 12-year-olds, they always get the truth out of us. And it's career day, and the kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?"
Sure,
What's your answer?
I help people sell better.
Okay. So what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
Oh God, I was going to be a professional baseball player. Actually was,
Okay.
and then I got hurt. Not in the traditional sense that most people do, but yeah, baseball was my first love and what I was going to do for a living, and was well on my way to doing it. And then life changed. But then I met my wife, and now I have two boys, and so I could have been a multi-millionaire, divorced three times, or I could have the life I have now. So I don't know. I think pretty good life for me right now. So I'll take that one.
What was your team? Did you have a favorite team?
Yeah, the Atlanta Braves. It's actually who I got a privilege of playing for, and it was a really awesome opportunity out of high school. And uh, yeah, like I said, it was an amazing experience. But unfortunately, uh, you can't play forever. So
Well, yeah, I remember when I went to career day when I was a kid. I think it was
yeah,
eighth grade. There was a guy that walked in the room, and I think he was an ex-baseball player. I don't know that he made
Mhm.
it to the majors. Maybe he did a little bit, but he just walked in the room and he had a dry erase marker and he put 0.001356, a long
Yeah,
number.
yeah,
And he said, "What is that?" And we're like, "I don't know." And he was like, "That's the chance that anybody that you know in your life is ever going to make it to a professional sport."
yep,
And he was like, further compounded it by saying, "You'll at least change careers 6 to 12 times." And we're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what? That's a
yeah,
lot." But
yeah.
that's nothing. I mean, that's actually true. So it was interesting. That really woke me up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great stat, and it's a true one. Yeah, so I mean, to answer the 12-year-old question, I help people sell better, and the way I do that is I've spent the last 20 years studying neuroscience and psychology and sociology and all this stuff, and it all started from really being able to read people better, being
Yeah.
able to understand people better. Uh, that in the book I talk about that's coming up. The reason I was so enthralled with that and so engulfed with that was because I was labeled as a developmental delay child, which we now call autism today.
Yeah.
And so for me, it didn't come naturally. So I had to learn it. And when I was in college and I took that first psychology course, I realized, oh my God, there is actually a blueprint. There is a way to learn this. And so I just threw everything I could into that, and sales just doused that even further. And I was so for most people, they look at a sales career as, oh my God, I got to make money. I got to sell this much. And there's quotas and there's all this stress. And I was complete opposite. I looked at it as, oh my God, it's like a giant experiment.
Yeah.
Like, this is so cool. Like, I get to see what makes people work, what doesn't work, kind of a fly on the wall. Right. And so I think the imagination there of just being able to look at it through that lens and have that open mindedness to it served me very well because my goal wasn't just to make money. My goal was to see if I could learn the game, right? And so it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And now, over all this time after real world testing and, going to MIT and really testing it against the academic rigor of what I kind of built this framework over 14 years, I realized I was onto something. I had to tweak a few things, but now it's ready. And I just want to share that message with the world because I just turned 40 and I can't sell forever either. And uh, I would have loved to have had what I have now when I started. And I think it'll really help people um, accelerate their learning curve and really put them in a place where they feel more comfortable in their skin if they're in this profession. And honestly, this stuff applies to your life too. It's because it's about the way the mind works, the way the mind makes decisions, the way the mind processes information. So yeah, I think it'll be helpful.
So let me ask you this. Take me back to your childhood. What were these foundational elements that were imbued in you that made you go so hard into sports and get to that professional level? And with what you're doing today and the success you had, what were those foundational building blocks that were set up for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've always been built that way. Some people are just naturally funny or, naturally curious. I was naturally competitive, and I always wanted to learn something and do something and be the best at it. Not because I wanted to throw it in people's faces, just because that's what I wanted. And you ever heard of a pitchback?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, little net system that you throw a baseball into or a soccer
Yeah.
ball you kick it into and it kick it back to you.
Yeah.
Well, my parents got me one when I was young and actually wore the thing out. That's how much obsession I had with the sport. And to answer your question, I think it was just I don't know. There's something in me just always had to keep pushing for the next thing, keep pushing myself to be better at something or refine it or get it down to a point where I felt comfortable with it, I guess. But uh, not everybody has that, and
Yeah.
that's okay. There's only so many psychopaths that could be out there in the world. So unfortunately, I just can't stop it. It's always been in me. I've always had to do something, and I wish I could stop sometimes. I really do, but unfortunately for me, it's just not the way I'm wired.
Who was your hero in baseball?
Oh God, that's the most impressive athlete that I liked the most was two actually. One everybody will know is Michael Jordan, just because of his sheer will.
Yeah.
Just that ability, that mentality he could tap into to just will his way into a win. And then another one was Greg Maddux. He was a pitcher for the Braves.
Hmm.
He wasn't the guy that you would expect to be a pitcher. He was a dork. He was a big nerd on analytics before analytics was a big thing. He didn't throw the ball hard. He could, but he stopped throwing the ball hard because it actually didn't work very well for him. You're talking about a guy that was throwing 7, 8 miles per hour slower than the average pitcher, but was having massive success with it.
Yeah.
Um, watching a guy like that, the way he was just so you know so ingrained in his process. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was a pretty cool thing to see, and I think taking a guy who didn't look like a big strong athlete who was a success in his sport and his field, um, just kind of showed you that maybe anybody could do it, even though it's not the case, but it made you feel that way.
Yeah.
So I would say those guys are different ends of the spectrum for their own reasons.
So let me ask you this. How do you balance all of this out? How do you take care of your soul, your family, the work that you do? What is the motivation every day to get up to do all of that in the best possible way?
Yeah, it's a good one. For a long time, I was running on adrenaline for a long time, and that I don't know how it lasted as long as it did. To be honest with you, when I studied neuroscience for business and persuasive communication at MIT um, last year, this was a big turning point for me. I realized that I was on borrowed time, and I think to answer your question as best as possible, I was not in alignment with the way my body was talking to me, with the way my mind was talking to me, and with the way I thought I had to be. And so what that means is basically I always had to have everything perfect, and I thought it always had to be perfect. And the truth is, it doesn't need to be. And the fact is, a lot of us are striving for whatever it is that we're striving for. Some people do want to make a bunch of money and be rich, and and show it off to their friends. Other people, here in the South, you got people that live in a trailer and work a regular job, and they got enough money for beer and pizza on Friday, and they're happy. In fact, some people say they're more fulfilled than us that are on the more successful end of the spectrum, depending on how you label that, right? So I think the best thing is that people just need to realize that you just have to find the thing that's going to make you happy, and then you got to find a way to make you a little bit of money, because obviously you're going to need money in this world. It's just part of it. But
Yeah.
Whether you work a job that you hate and then you find something to counterbalance that in your life that brings you happiness, you could do it that way. Or you can, get the holy grail and find something that you love and make money at it too. There's different ways to balance that. So I think that's the biggest thing I learned over the years, especially after coming out of those courses, was you got to listen to your body first. Then you got to listen to your emotional part of yourself. Be honest with yourself about how you really feel about things, because we mask a lot. And I think that's what's wrong with a lot of us today. A lot of people feel like the social media thing, I got to be out there. I got to be on it. I've got to make my life look amazing, even if it's not. Um, and I think we're chasing that woman in the red dress is what they call it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's hard because it's hard not to get locked into that,
Yeah.
right? It's hard not to get caught up in it, especially when all your friends are doing it.
Yeah.
And you're younger, right? Like, I'm 40, but there's people that are 20 years younger than me. That's their life.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was 20, yeah, you were more influenced by people around you than you are as you get older. Um, so yeah, it's tough. It's a really good question. How about you?
Yeah, it's so many things. I mean, I'm kind of diversified in the way I look. My son actually is on the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been fueled so much by his life and taking care of him and making sure it's all good. But on the other side
Yeah.
of it, he has shown me a whole other side of this life that was just kind of not illuminated. And there's so many amazing things. I'm always he is actually one of my heroes, if not my hero, because of how hard he has to try to do
Yeah.
things because the world is the way it is.
Yeah.
So there's so many factors. In podcasting, this is a wonderful realm of getting ideas and stories out. It's such a refreshing world to step into all the time.
Yeah. It's the podcast world is really blown up. And I think there's a lot of people that have done it for good reasons. And then there's a lot of people, like anything,
Yeah,
that have done it for the wrong reasons. But um, I think that's the coolest thing about social media. Originally it was about connecting. It wasn't about monetization. Only when people realized that they could sell stuff through it, yeah, and then turned into what it is today. But I still think that a lot of people want this.
yeah,
The most successful podcasts out there, the most successful businesses out there, they speak directly to the core of the person that they're trying to serve, right? And
right.
so um, for me in this book, it's that to the sales community, and anybody else who wants to talk about it. But most importantly, it's just, hey, here's my path, here's what I've learned, here's the science behind it. So it's not a guru talking to you, telling you some fabled story that worked once or twice in their career, and then they slapped their label on it and sold it to you. It's based on real science. It's based on real information. It's based on stuff that's been proven over generations. It's tapped into us. It's hardwired into us. Uh, it can be used for bad. It really can.
Yeah,
I don't encourage it. I always tell them to use it for good. But um, the stuff I teach it's powerful,
yeah,
and it can be dangerous if you use it the wrong way. Because when you realize you can control people like that, and it's easier than you think, sadly, uh, uh, you got to be careful with that.
yeah,
And I think there's a maturity that comes with that. And so while I don't teach people in the book everything that they need, I don't give them like the full alchemy set to create their own nuclear missile. But I do give them some of the pieces to help them kind of understand the concept of it, right? Because I don't think anybody should have that kind of power without some supervision.
Yeah, absolutely. These are the stories that this is the why I love watching baseball. You'll hear about players that have these like other sides to them, and you're like, you
Yeah.
just wouldn't even imagine, you'd have no idea, but that's the beauty of how life works. We all are diversified and have so many, unique talents. So, speaking of adrenaline, let's say you have a dream tonight, you run into the 18-year-old version of you, getting ready to charge out into the world, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Um, Slow down. You don't have to go as fast as you think you do. Uh, Enjoy it. It's the same things we've heard people say before us, but by the time you realize it, it's too late. I think that's part of the fun, though, right? Part of the fun of being young is just doing stuff and being a little stupid and and doing things you probably wouldn't normally do later in life. But that's kind of the excitement, right? Is to get out there and kind of mix it up and see where you fall in this world. But yeah, the advice is just try to be a little bit more patient, try to be a little bit more um, thoughtful, try to be a little bit more present. It doesn't last forever, and you will miss that time at some point. So yeah, I'd probably say that.
So, speaking of youth and crazy and things that we go after, what's the best baseball story? Us as fans look in, and it's like for instance, yesterday I was in a sporting goods store and the Royals had one day off, and I'm a big
Mhm.
Royals fan. And I'm going up the escalator and I look down and I see one of our players there. His name is Jason Isbell. And I look over
Okay.
and I'm like, hold on a second. I look back and I realize that he's with his son and I just waved it off. And I bet you if I ran into him again, he would totally see that because it's
Right.
interesting. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like
Yeah.
if he would have been alone, I would have been like, dude, what's up? But there's just a part of me now that I've been in this environment long
Mhm.
enough when
Yeah.
you're with your family or you're out, no, it's not okay. That's not when
Yeah.
you got to give people that. So and I say that because there's just different worlds that exist with athletes, and I don't think the pedestrian blue collar fan understands that. So what is a good story? What is a fun baseball story that you have?
Oh man, there's so many. I'll give you two. There's a gory one and a funny one.
Okay.
The gory one is I was playing and this guy was throwing. He was pitcher, left-handed pitcher, very talented, and it's late in the game, and it looks like they're trying to warm some guys up to pull them out of the game. And he goes to throw a pitch, and it sounded like a tree trunk had snapped. And it turned out it was his upper part of his arm had
Oh,
broken from the pitch, so his arm's just dangling there,
oh my
right?
God.
And he doesn't know what to do. He's just sitting there like caught the ball back from the catcher, and he just kind of look at his arm like it's just hanging there. He doesn't know what to do. So yeah, naturally that was a pretty gory one. That's not the worst one I've seen, but it's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
The next one, the funny one is how as a fan. So as a fan, you go to a ball game and you pay your ticket and you come in and you think you kind of get carte blanche. Some people get carte blanche to say whatever they want to players. And we had this fan that kept coming to our games and kept always harassing one of our players. And he just didn't let up. I don't know what it was. I don't know if he didn't like the way the guy looked or talked or what it was, but something about him he just didn't like this player. So long story short, we're at a game. The player's been on a little bit of a slump. The guy's just razzing him. Player's had enough of this. The player finally goes over to him and just says, "Hey man, like, what's your deal?" The fan's just like, he wasn't ready for it, right? And he's standing there right by the net, and the player's confronting him, and the guy just shuts up and just sits down and like doesn't know what to do with himself. The player goes up there and then hits a home run. As he's trotting around the bases, he comes back, and how those guys will like do the fingers to the chest and to the sky, like thank God for the home run.
Yeah.
He did the same thing, but instead of looking up, he looked right at the guy and he pointed at him. He goes, "Thanks, man, that was for you," and he just goes back in the dugout. And the fan was so embarrassed, and
Yeah,
afterwards the fan stayed, and they actually talked and worked it out. And then the guy just goes, "I thought that's what you're supposed to do when you go to baseball games. Just go and give the guy a bunch of
I
crap,
gotcha. Yeah,
just thought that's what his dad did it, his grandfather did it. You just thought that's what you do, you just go to games and you razz him a little bit, and he learned something in that situation, the fan, and so did the player,
yeah,
and because he was worked up. Let me tell you, he was in the dugout. He's like, this guy, and I'm like, hey man, just he's a fan. Like,
yeah,
what are you worried about? You have a job to do. Go out there and do your job. And so he's like, I'm going to say something. I'm like, well, okay, but just keep it light, all right? You got to focus. We got to win this game. And he did. To his credit, he did. He kept himself composed. But I think fans, it's hard. They don't understand what goes into it.
exactly.
And how can you? It's I'm not a podcaster. I couldn't tell you what it's like to do your show and produce it and find people to go on the show. And what I mean, there's a whole world to that. So going back to what you said on how you help the younger person, the younger you, just remember that you don't know everything, and remember that there's a world that someone's coming from that you need to take account for, right? You gotta factor that in.
It's interesting because I've always had a high level of empathy for the baseball player. There's actually a special on Netflix about a young Red Sox player, and it really
Mm-hmm.
gets into the mind and mentality. And I love those kinds of shows.
Yeah,
But I got into sports broadcasting and I got inside and I got into sports radio, and man, that world, phew, I couldn't do it. Like it was like none of those people could play a sport if they even tried. None of
no,
them. And they're up there and they're shouting and they're going crazy, and it's too much, man. It's like I get away and I think, do these players, if they can't listen to it, it's the same thing. Like how many times can you get the same question? How many times can you get the same spin? How many times do you have to hear people get upset when you're in a slump? How many times do you get put on the pedestal because you finally do good? It's like the
yeah,
Royals, for instance, are kind of in a slump right now, and it's like
right,
it's okay, guys. This is what happens. Like all these teams are going to hit a slump at one point or another. There's not like,
yeah,
especially in New York, like Mets and Yankee fans lose their minds. And it's like this happens to everybody. But
yeah,
for some reason in New York it's more magnanimous. When it goes flat, it's bad. And I don't know if it's amplified by the fan base and that community. But anyway, I've always been very cognizant, and I feel for you. I feel for players and athletes because most people will not feel that pressure on a daily basis. It's always pressure. There's always something that needs to be done. And you guys are regular dudes that have families and lives, and you process reality the way we do. So I've always been very cognizant of that. It's weird.
yeah. I think like you get exposed to things, and you can go one of two ways with it. You can either be okay with it and say, hey, this is part of the deal, and this is not what I signed up for, but this comes with the territory and the money and whatever else, the fame or whatever it is that comes with it, right? That's good. um, my dad always said that there's a 90-10 rule in life. There's 90% of what you want, 10% of what you don't need. What you got to figure out is if you can live with the 10% that you don't need. And so I try to apply that a lot in my life of just, there's going to be a lot of good in it, whatever you do, but there's also going to be that thing, that one bad thing or a couple bad things that you're going to hate. Like you said, for athletes, it's the fans.
Yeah,
Um, Not always are they bad fans.
right.
Most of the time, they're really cool and they're really nice and they're really, encouraging, and they're in awe of what you can do, and they're just like, man, it's so cool that I can't believe you can do that. Like, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know, I just do it, and it's a young man's answer, right?
Yeah,
And then there's just fans like the story I told where they just, oh, I thought you were just supposed to give them crap the whole time. Like
right.
I just thought that's what you do. Like, these fan bases are all different. Some are more understanding than others. But people live through that vicariously. They just, like you said, they know. The writers know, the fans know, the people who are casual fans know. You'll never be able to do what these guys do. That's why they're on the field or the court or the ice or whatever, right? And that's the allure of it. It's kind of like a singer or a musician. You just see them and you're just like, man, that's so cool. Like,
Yeah.
I know I can never do what they do, and so I think there's that. I think there's that godlike,
Hmm.
look that you have. to these people because you can do something that most people can't do. And I think that's also I think it's also that you go the wrong way with it, and you expect people to be that way to you, right?
Hmm.
Like, do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do? Like, look at me. And those guys burn out. Those are the guys that are watching Twitter. Those are the guys that are watching ESPN. Those are the guys that are like, I mean, they're like a mental roller coaster. I In the background, to answer your question, you have different pools, but the pool of the temper tantrum 3-year old exists.
Yeah.
Just like the pool of the calm, cooled, and collected, and like, hey man, that's just how it goes. That's just, we're show business. You
Yeah.
know, put on your dancing shoes. Like that's what they pay us for. And everybody else is in between. But it's tough. It's tough for both sides. It's tough for the fans because the fans, some want to be respectful like you, and others think they're being respectful and they're not.
Yeah.
And it comes down to everything in life comes down to education.
Hmm.
Ignorance is what I call it. If you're ignorant about something, we always think ignorance is a bad word. It's not.
Right.
If you're ignorant about something, it just means you just don't know enough about it yet.
Yeah.
That's okay. And so I think if more people are willing to accept their own ignorance and just say, look, you know what? I'm sorry, man. I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to do that. I think we'd be a lot better off. But we're so afraid of being blasted on social media. We're so afraid of being reprimanded and shamed. And I talk about this actually in the book about why we're so afraid to take responsibility. And a little tidbit is it has to do with our prehistoric nature.
Yeah.
Um, when you were wrong about something and the group didn't like it, you got exiled, and exile meant death. So, naturally, you didn't want to be wrong about things. So now it's just different. It's a different version of it, but that's what happens.
So when you look back on your life, everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved to, what are you the proudest of?
Being a dad, being a good husband. I mean, that's the real answer. I know it sounds kind of sappy, but it's true. Being able to, like, look, you can make money, you can do great things, you could get compliments, you could get fake love online, like, you know what I mean? You can get all that stuff, right? But in your closest circle, in your most vulnerable times, who really knows you, right? And who's willing to accept you for who you really are? And being a good dad and being a good husband is a tough thing.
Yeah.
Just like it's tough for them to be a good kid and to be a good wife, and it's tough on everybody because you don't want to let them down.
Yeah.
You don't want them to think that you don't care or that it's not important to you, or it's just, but life gets in the way sometimes, and you're not focused on them 100%. And the parents that tell their kids they are, it's not true. You think you are, but you're not. You
Yeah.
got other things going on in your life. You have your own life to live. That doesn't mean you don't love them any less.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, for me, the proudest moments are just raising two men. They're 7 and 9 right now, but I treat them like men, as much as I can. Of course, they're still kids,
Yeah.
but I want them to. I want them to be as set up as possible because you don't know when your time is up. I'm not here forever, and I try to give them as many lessons as I possibly can because I don't want them to not have them. Um, that's the hardest thing as being a dad is that
Yeah.
you just don't know how much knowledge can I cram into that little head before it's my time to go, because I don't want this thing that I've created, this child, to get taken advantage of. I don't want them to get hurt the same way I did. I don't want, you know what I mean? You just want
Yeah.
everything to be better for them. They're going to get hurt. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
You just want them to not get hurt as bad as you did.
Yep.
And so, um, I think that's the hardest part. And for your spouse, it's the same thing. That's the person you chose to be with. So of course they're important. But yeah, to be proud of that, that's whether this book's a success or not, whether I go on podcasts or not. Like, yeah, this is all window dressing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's any less important to me, but it just, in context of what everything that's out there, the people in your life, the closest people to you, whether it's a child or a spouse or a grandparent or an uncle, those are the people, man. Those are the people who know you. Those are the ones that matter the most at the end.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that gets your book, everybody that you work with, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
You got good questions. I like these. Um, uh, for me, I I never think I'm good enough. I always have to push myself. I always have to. It's never. I've been writing this book in my head for probably 14 years.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like it's just, well, do I really need to get into social media? I didn't get into social media. Maybe I should have. Like I always worry about like if I'm gonna be putting stuff out there that's not valuable.
yeah,
Because that's the worst part. Like that's the worst part is putting something out there that you know doesn't work. And I know there's people that do it. I know there's people that are out there that push stuff and they've made a bunch of money and good for them, you know, and maybe they think it works. I don't know. That's possible too. But I think for a lot of people that peddle stuff, and I think that's why we're in what I call a trust recession right now, is people just don't know what to believe anymore, what to trust anymore, because there's so many people that took advantage of that with
yeah,
this whole social media thing. I think that's the biggest fight I've had personally is just, is it good enough? Am I good enough? Will it actually help people? Can I prove it? Like, did I do it for myself? You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than telling somebody to do something and you never did it yourself.
yeah,
And they're like, it didn't work. And you're like, oh yeah, I didn't try it myself. Oh, really? You just had me jump off the bridge for no reason? Like, I feel like, in order to lead, you have to have walked in the shoes,
yeah,
you know?
totally.
And to lead well, like, I mean, anybody can, I guess, call themselves leader these days, but to lead well, you have to have done it at least once
Yeah,
and just had those feelings, those emotions, the adrenaline, the cortisol, the dopamine, like all of it, right? Just firing on all cylinders and be like, oh my God, this is really scary. Like, but I'm going to do it. And then it worked out, or you failed miserably. And now you go, oh, cool. Don't do that next time. Do it this way. So I think for me, that's been the hardest thing is I hit 40 and I'm like midlife crisis, like I'm like, dude, if I'm not going to do it now, I won't ever do it. So just do it.
yeah,
Go on these podcasts, finish the dang book and put it out there. And there's going to be haters. There's going to be lovers. But at the end of the day, if it can help people, like that's what it's about, man. It's, you can't take it with you.
yeah.
Um, so why not help somebody else? Someone helped me, someone has helped you along the way. It's just the right thing to do. Um, and again, I know these sound like sappy answers, but that's just truly what I believe.
Sure.
If you can help somebody, help them. If you can't, you can't. But tell them.
Yeah. That's no, it's so well said. Well said. So Wired is the book. If anyone wants to pick up a copy, reach out to you. Any of the good work you're doing, where do they go?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of finishing up the book. It should be ready here in a few months. And then we're going to build out a website and everything like that for it, and publisher and all that good stuff. But for now, it's coming. If they do want to introduce themselves, I'm on LinkedIn, or they can reach out through your podcast and we can do it that way, however they want to do it. But at the end of the day, it's all about connecting and helping people. So that's what it's about.
I love it. Tony, this has been so refreshing. What a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. Best of luck with the book and everything you're doing, man. It's wonderful.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.